This is my Neon Blue Dwarf Gourami, searching along the bottom of his tank for something good to eat. There are several small pieces of fish pellets scattered across the substrate, but those don't seem to interest him as much as the live blackworms that could be hidden amongst the leaf litter at the bottom of his tank. Sure, he eats the fish pellets without any problems, but he'd really prefer to be eating food that moves, just like he might find in the wild. So whenever I can, I feed him live food, like blackworms and mosquito larvae. These live prey items are good for him because they keep him active and curious about his surroundings as he goes hunting for whatever he can find. Watching him chase down live foods is entertaining for both of us, and it allows me to film my little friend behaving like he would in the wild. I've already filmed him eating live blackworms, and now I've decided that I'd like to show you how he hunts for mosquito larvae because it's a lot more exciting to watch, and it's not something that you get to see very often. But there's one problem. It's the middle of winter in the northeastern United States where I live, so all of the mosquitoes and their larvae are long gone. But last fall, as the temperatures were dropping, the female mosquitoes in my neighborhood laid lots of eggs in this bucket of water that are now frozen inside a solid block of ice. Those dormant mosquito eggs are waiting for the warm weather to return so that the ice can melt. Then, when the water is warm enough, the eggs will begin to hatch into hundreds upon hundreds of tiny mosquito larvae. I use this to my advantage by leaving several buckets of water outside throughout the spring, summer, and fall so that the female mosquitoes can lay their eggs in them. During the warm months of the year, I monitor these buckets of water very closely and remove the mosquito larvae as soon as they appear, and then feed them to my fish so they never have a chance to turn into adult mosquitoes. Nonetheless, as the winter arrives and the water in the buckets freeze, each bucket holds thousands of dormant mosquito eggs hidden inside the ice. And now I've decided to bring this bucket inside and allow it to thaw so that I can harvest some mosquito larvae to feed my fish. Here's the same bucket that you just saw sitting in the snow. It's been inside for a couple weeks now, and I've been harvesting larvae from it for the last week or so, while being very careful not to let any of the mosquito wrigglers mature to the point where they turn into adult mosquitoes. Be sure to notice the branch in this bucket. I put that there last summer to provide a means of escape for any animal that might accidentally fall into the bucket. I learned this little trick the hard way many years ago when a little chipmunk fell into one of my outdoor tubs and drowned because it couldn't get out of the water. I love that little chipmunk because every time I went out to water my garden during the hot summer months, he would make an appearance and have a drink of water. I was very sad that he died because I created an artificial body of water that left him with no means of escape when he fell in. So, if any of you keep fish in outdoor tubs, I recommend putting something in the water that allows animals to crawl out if they should happen to fall in. Nonetheless, there are lots of mosquito larvae in this bucket that are very close to maturing into flying adults, so quite a few of my fish will be getting live food today. Now, before we look at my dwarf gourami chasing down mosquito larvae, I'd like to show you a close-up look of what he'll be eating. This is a female mosquito, and these are mosquito wrigglers. And this is the pupal stage, just before it turns into an adult mosquito. And these are the ones that you really have to watch out for, because it could turn into a flying adult in just a few minutes. So these are the ones that I always use first, because they're in the final stage of their development. They look a little like a comma and have a very different swimming style than the younger mosquito wrigglers. I use a small siphon hose to add just a few mosquito larvae at a time to make sure that all of them are being eaten, because in the warm water of your aquarium, these larvae can turn into adult mosquitoes very quickly, and you don't want that. And if you've never fed mosquito larvae to your fish before, then it's best to start slowly and only add one or two at first, because your fish may not recognize them as food right away. And you don't want a bunch of uneaten larvae living in your aquarium and then turning into mosquitoes. So it's best to start slowly and watch to make sure that your fish is eating all of them before you add more. However, this is not my gourami's first mosquito rodeo, so there's no doubt in his mind that these are a tasty treat, and none of these larvae will survive in his tank for very long. Which brings me to an important point. As you watch this fish gobble up these mosquito wrigglers, it's important to note that this was filmed over the course of several days, so he's not eating all of these larvae in one feeding. And now it's time for a short commercial break because these ads help pay the bills, and at the moment they're my only source of income. So please don't go away. There's still a lot more to see that you're not going to see anywhere else. After giving my dwarf gourami these mosquito wrigglers on several consecutive days, he starts to get very excited each time he realizes that he's about to get more. And he never gets this worked up when I feed him flakes or pellets, because the motion and speed of these wrigglers activate an instinctive prey drive in his brain that causes him to become hyper-focused on even the smallest movement in the tank. His head swings back and forth as he scans the surface looking for more, and nothing escapes his attention. Nonetheless, this tank has a dense covering of Brazilian pennywort as well as hornwort, so it would be very easy for some of these mosquito larvae to hide amongst the floating plants and escape being eaten. And this is something to keep in mind if you use mosquito larvae in your aquarium, especially if you have a lot of floating plants and you don't have fish that spend a lot of time up near the surface. And even though this gourami does go to the surface to breathe quite often, whenever I'm done feeding him mosquito larvae, I always make sure to jostle the floating plants with my hand, so that any larva that might be hiding in there will panic and then race to the bottom of the tank. And when they do, the gourami will see them and make sure that they don't ever swim to the surface again. And just in case you didn't know, both the gourami and the mosquito larva have to swim to the surface every so often to get oxygen, so there's really no safe place for these mosquito wrigglers to hide. Nonetheless, gouramis are normally thought of as slow and graceful creatures, which is true, but they're also incredibly fast and agile when they need to be. Just look at his speed and how focused he is when his predatory instincts to hunt fast-moving prey are engaged. And this is the wild side of their behavior that you won't see unless it's activated by a live prey item like these mosquito wrigglers. Then a different side of him appears as he exhibits a much more natural behavior than you'd see if he was just casually floating at the surface eating pellets or flakes. And I really think that this is good for him. It keeps him active and alert, and it's also great exercise that probably keeps him from getting fat and bloated. Just think how much healthier we'd be if we had to chase down our food like he does. And just so we're clear, the Dave is not fat and bloated. In fact, I'm in excellent physical condition, and I look a lot like one of those perfectly sculpted Greek statues. Except I have a nice tan, and I still have both of my arms. And of course, my abs, as you would expect, are rock hard. That's right, ladies, rock hard abs, both of my arms, and a nice tan. So what more could you possibly ask for in a man? Well, here are a few suggestions that you may want to consider. Okay, sorry about that. I lost my train of thought there for a moment, but I'm back now to talk about this beautiful fish. It's pretty obvious that he's very excited by this live food as he watches the surface and waits for me to add more. Every little movement catches his attention, and if you've ever wondered what a happy, healthy fish looks like, this is it. And as it turns out, he can get very impatient as he waits for me to add more of these tasty treats to his aquarium. And sometimes he gets so excited that he starts to spit water at me and jump up in the air when I'm not putting them in his tank fast enough. Watch closely because he's about to spit some water at me right now. And that's his way of telling me to hurry up. He needs more live food. And here's another example of him spitting water and then jumping because he's so excited by these mosquito wrigglers. If you'd like to see him spitting water in more detail, I have a video all about that as well, and I'll provide a link to that project at the end of this video if you're interested. And if you've never seen that video, then you should definitely check it out because he's one very talented fish. Okay, I've stopped the video here so that I can draw your attention to his dorsal fin. Now watch as it quivers with excitement as he hunts down every last one of these mosquito larvae. That quivering dorsal fin and this level of arousal is not something that you get to see every day. Even his long, thin, feeler-like ventral fins show how excited he is to be feeding on these mosquito wrigglers. Yes, there's no doubt about it. This is one happy fish. And now it's time for another short commercial break, but when we return, I'll show you a more wide-angle view of his tank, and I'll talk about why I set it up the way I did. So stick around, there's a lot more cool stuff to see. My dwarf gourami lives alone in a 10-gallon tank that I set up to look like a dark, stagnant, weed-filled swamp, similar to the type of habitat where he might be found in the wild. For filtration, I use a small sponge filter so that the water movement is kept to a minimum. There's a black sand substrate, a couple pieces of driftwood, and a few dried leaves to add some tannins to the water. Floating at the surface, there's a fairly dense cover of Brazilian pennywort as well as some hornwort. Both of these plants grow quickly and help to process some of the waste products produced by the fish. I use a tight-fitting lid so that the air above the surface is kept humid, which these fish prefer. The tight-fitting lid also helps to retain the heat as well as prevent the fish from jumping out. I keep the temperature at around 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 27 degrees Celsius. The pH hovers at around 6.5 and the water is relatively soft with a KH and a GH of around 5 or 6. Part of my reasoning for setting up the tank the way I did is that I try to have my videos look as if they were filmed in the wild. I don't like seeing heaters, filters, and cords running in the back of the tank. So I prefer this wild-looking jungle-style aquarium setup over the more neatly trimmed and brightly lit tanks that I see in many videos. And I think the subdued lighting created by the dense layer of floating plants creates a much more relaxed environment for the fish. And when he's in the lower levels of the aquarium where there's less light, his metallic blue coloration really stands out against the dark background. There's no doubt about it. He's a very beautiful fish, and it's a lot of fun to watch him hunting for live prey, just like he would in the wild. And there's something very satisfying about watching him eat these mosquito larvae, because each one that disappears in the mouth of this fish means that there'll be one less mosquito to bite me during the warm months of the year. And if you decide to try this, remember, you're not breeding mosquitoes. In fact, you're actually stopping them from multiplying by allowing the females to lay their eggs in a bucket of water and then feeding their larvae to your fish. So as long as you're not allowing any of these larvae to become adults, you're actually reducing the population. They're going to lay their eggs somewhere, whether you like it or not, so it might as well be in a place where those eggs will never become flying adults, and instead they'll become food for your fish. Nonetheless, some people worry that culturing mosquito larvae in a bucket of water might introduce a disease or a fish-related parasite, but that's just not true. There's no way that a mosquito is going to transfer a fish parasite or fish-related disease from a natural body of water into a bucket of water in your yard, because the female mosquito never actually enters the water when she's laying her eggs. So it's very unlikely that she'll ever come into contact with fish pathogens or fish parasites, never mind carrying them through the air from one place to another. Yes, mosquitoes are a vector for all sorts of diseases that affect humans as well as other mammals, but not fish. In fact, mosquito-borne illnesses kill more people every year than all other animals combined. So, if you're going to try growing mosquito larvae at some point in the future, then I suggest that you're very careful. I've been doing this for nearly 30 years now, and it's never been a problem. The main thing that you have to watch out for are dragonfly and damselfly nymphs. But there are several ways to avoid introducing these dangerous predators into your aquarium. So if you're interested in trying this with your fish, I have an excellent video on how to safely and responsibly grow and use mosquito larvae to feed your fish, and I've left a link to that video at the end of this one. And it's not a complicated process, and it's perfectly safe as long as you follow some very basic guidelines on how to do it correctly. And that brings us to the end of another amazing video. Thank you so much for watching until the very end, and I really hope that you have a beautiful day.